My name is Jason Rivera, and at 35, I thought I'd seen it all in this barbershop. 5 years of cutting hair and lavapiés had taught me that every client brings a story, but nothing prepared me for what was about to happen. Subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to get access to more stories like this. The bell on the door rang that October Tuesday with a different sound, more hesitant than usual. I looked up from Roberto's graying hair, my first client of the day, and saw a young man standing in the doorway as if he were deciding whether to come in or run away. He wore a black beanie pulled low over his eyes, a worn leather jacket, and baggy pants that completely hid his physique. "Morning," he said in a raspy voice that sounded like it hadn't been used in hours. "I need a cut." Roberto grumbled something about today's youth and their strange ways as I finished trimming his white hair. The guy just stood there, tense as a guitar string about to snap, constantly looking out the window as if he expected someone to show up at any moment. "You can take a seat in the back chair," I motioned with my head. "I'll be done here with Roberto in 2 minutes." He nodded and walked over with calculated steps, every movement seeming rehearsed not to draw attention. When Roberto left, leaving the familiar scent of aftershave mixed with the strong coffee I always kept brewed, I approached the mysterious young man. "What can I do for you?" "Just a touch-up," he mumbled, taking off his beanie. Holy crap. His hair was perfect. A recent professional cut. Every strand in place, not a single visible flaw. But something in his eyes, a strange mix of fear and determination, stopped me from questioning him. What you hear here is just the beginning. The complete stories, unfiltered, and with all the details you can imagine, are available now. Check out the link in the description right now. "Sure," I replied, draping the cape over his shoulders. As I worked, I noticed details I couldn't ignore. His hands trembled slightly when he thought I wasn't looking. A thin scar traced the back of his neck, almost invisible under his hair. And he checked the street through the mirror every few seconds, like an animal always on alert for predators. "First time in lavapiés?" I tried to make conversation. "No," was all he said. 15 minutes later, he paid in cash. Crumpled bills he pulled from the inside pocket of his jacket, and left without looking back. I stood there holding the money, feeling that something important had just happened, but without being able to understand what. The next day, at the exact same time, the doorbell rang again with that hesitant sound. It was him. "Another touch-up?" I asked, already knowing the answer. He just nodded. This time, when I put my hands on his hair, I noticed how he closed his eyes for an instant, as if the touch were a relief he hadn't received in a long time. His shoulders relaxed just a little, and I realized he'd been holding his breath since he walked in. "What's your name?" I asked, making unnecessary movements with the scissors. A long pause. "Cole. Welcome to my barbershop, Cole. I'm Jason." In the following days, Cole became part of my routine. Always at the same time, always asking for the same impossible touch-up, always paying in cash. Samantha, my assistant, started making jokes about my ghost client. But I could see how she was also intrigued by this quiet young man who showed up religiously every day. It was on the 5th visit that things started to change. Derek had just left, after spending 40 minutes trying to convince a French tourist to have dinner with him when Cole arrived. This time, instead of going straight to the chair, he stood there looking at the place as if seeing it for the first time. "You like jazz?" I asked, noticing how his eyes were fixed on the small stereo where Miles Davis was playing softly. "Kind of Blue is one of the best albums ever recorded," he said, and for the first time, his voice didn't sound tense. I smiled. A man with good taste. While I was cutting his already perfect hair, I discovered that Cole knew more about music than most of my clients knew about their own professions. We talked about Coltrane, Parker, and how jazz had this unique ability to express things that words never could. "Did you study music?" I asked. "Medicine," he replied, and immediately shut down again, as if he had revealed something he shouldn't have. From that day on, our relationship began to evolve. Cole still arrived tense, still constantly checking the street, but during the 15 minutes he spent in my chair, something in him relaxed. I started playing jazz whenever he came in, creating a soundtrack for our silent encounters. I found out he was a voracious reader, philosophy, science fiction, classics. That he watched American football when he could find broadcasts in Madrid. That he had intelligent opinions on almost everything, but always expressed them cautiously, as if every word were weighed before being spoken. I, in turn, began to share stories from the barbershop. I told him about Roberto and his conspiracy theories about the Spanish government. About Derek and his epic attempts at seduction that always ended in failure. About Samantha, and how she could make any client feel at home. "Why did you come to Spain?" Cole asked one afternoon, while I was trimming hair that was already perfect. "Change of scenery," I replied, keeping it purposefully vague. "What about you? What are you doing in Madrid?" "Tourism," he said, but his eyes in the mirror told me he was lying. It was fascinating how two strangers could develop an intimacy based on unsaid things. There was an electricity in the air every time our hands accidentally touched. When he paid and our fingers met for a split second longer than necessary. When our eyes met in the mirror and stayed there for too long before one of us looked away. Samantha noticed. "That Cole likes you," she said one afternoon after he left. "He's just a regular client," I replied, but I felt my face get hot. "Jason, honey, I've worked in a barber shop for 3 years. I know the difference between a regular client and someone who's in love with their barber." The word love echoed in my head for the rest of the day. 2 weeks after Cole's first appearance, my carefully constructed routine was shaken in a way I didn't expect. I was closing the barber shop when a man in a dark suit appeared at the door. He was in his 40s, broad-shouldered, and when he smiled, I saw a golden tooth gleaming. "Sorry to bother you," he said with an accent I couldn't identify. "I'm looking for someone. A young man, always wears a black beanie. Have you seen him around here?" Every instinct I'd developed in 5 years of dealing with all kinds of people told me to lie. "No, sorry. I don't remember anyone like that." He studied me for a moment that was too long. "Are you sure? It's very important that I find him." "I'm sure." The man nodded slowly, but his eyes continued to size me up like a predator studying its prey. "If you see him, please let me know." He left a blank business card with only a phone number. "There's a considerable reward for anyone who helps me." After he left, I stood there holding the card, a chill in my stomach that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Any doubt I might have had about Cole running from something dangerous had just been confirmed. The next day, Cole didn't show up. I tried to focus on the other clients, but every time the bell rang, my heart raced, hoping it was him. Roberto made his usual complaints about the modern world. Derek talked about his latest romantic rejection. Samantha tried to lighten the mood, but I could barely focus on her words. "Where's your mysterious boyfriend?" Derek asked with his typical arrogance. "He's not my boyfriend," I snapped back, more harshly than I intended. Derek smiled like a shark sensing blood in the water. "Too bad, because if he were, I'd say you have questionable taste. Weird guy, always hiding in that beanie." Something about the way he said weird deeply annoyed me. "Cole is a good man." "Cole?" Derek laughed. "You don't even know anything about him, Jason. For all we know, he could be a criminal." "Go screw yourself, Derek." The silence that followed was awkward. Derek looked at me with genuine surprise. I'd never spoken to a client like that. Samantha stopped what she was doing, clearly shocked. "Sorry," I muttered. "It's been a rough day." Derek left shortly after, but not before giving me a look that mixed anger with something that seemed dangerously close to romantic interest. Samantha waited until we were alone to speak. "Jason, you're in love with him." It wasn't a question. "It's complicated," I replied. "It's only complicated if you make it complicated." She touched my arm gently. "When was the last time you allowed yourself to feel something real for someone?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. 5 years. 5 years since I left the US and the mess my life had become. 5 years of building a safe, predictable, emotionally neutral existence. And now, a mysterious guy with haunted eyes was making it all fall apart. "He'll come back," Samantha said with a conviction I didn't feel. But Cole didn't come back the next day, or the day after that. On Friday night, after 3 days without seeing him, I decided to close early. I was putting away my tools when I heard desperate knocking on the door. I turned and saw a familiar silhouette through the glass. Cole. Even in the faint streetlight, I could see that something was terribly wrong. I rushed to open the door and he practically fell into the barber shop. "Jason," he said in a hoarse voice, "I need help." That's when I saw the blood. A dark stain spreading across the left sleeve of his leather jacket. "My God, what happened?" "I can't explain here," he said, looking nervously at the street. "Please, I need a safe place." Without hesitation, I locked the door and guided him to the back of the shop, up the narrow stairs that led to my apartment. Cole followed, leaving occasional drops of blood on the way. In my small but clean bathroom, under the fluorescent light that revealed every detail of his pale face, I could finally assess the extent of the injury. A deep cut ran across his forearm, clearly made by some kind of sharp blade. "This needs stitches," I said as I washed my hands. "I can't go to a hospital." "Why?" Cole looked at me through the mirror, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Because they'd find me. They, the man with the golden tooth. Suddenly, all the pieces began to fit together. "Cole," I said gently as I cleaned the wound with warm water. "Whatever you're running from, you can tell me." He flinched when the disinfectant touched the open wound. "You wouldn't understand. Try me." As I applied the makeshift bandage, Cole remained silent. But I could feel the internal struggle happening inside him. The desire to trust fighting against years of self-preservation. The scent of the disinfectant mixed with his masculine perfume, creating a strangely intimate combination. My hands trembled slightly. Not from the severity of the injury, but from the closeness of our bodies. From the way he watched me in the mirror with an intensity that made my heart beat faster. "Jason," he finally said, his voice just a whisper. "If I tell you the truth, everything will change between us." I finished tying the bandage and turned to face him directly. We were so close I could feel his warm breath on my face. "Maybe it's time for some things to change. If you want to discover the secret Cole was hiding and how it completely transformed Jason's life, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to follow the rest of this incredible story." Cole looked at me for a moment that seemed eternal, his fingers trembling slightly as he held the edge of the sink. The bathroom light created shadows that accentuated the angles of his face, making him even more beautiful in an almost painful way. "You're going to think I'm crazy," he murmured. "Let me decide that." He took a deep breath and started unbuttoning his shirt. My heart raced, thinking about something completely different from what was about to happen. But when the fabric parted, revealing his bare chest, I saw something that made me forget any romantic thoughts. A tattoo. No, it wasn't exactly a tattoo. It was more like a complex barcode, etched into the skin just above his heart. The numbers and lines formed a pattern that looked more surgical than artistic. "What is that?" I asked, my voice coming out raspier than normal. "My brand of ownership," he said bitterly. "A serial number, if you prefer." Without thinking, I reached out and delicately traced the code with my fingertips. Cole gasped at my touch, and I felt his skin get goosebumps under my hand. The electricity that had always existed between us intensified instantly. "Cole, when I was 8, he began, his voice choked. "My parents sold me to a medical experimental program. They said it was for my own good, that I would be special." I kept tracing the outlines of the mark, mesmerized by how his breathing quickened with each touch. What kind of program? They were creating perfect donors, genetically modified children with accelerated regenerative capabilities, organs that could be harvested and regenerated indefinitely. The horror of his words hit me like a punch, but I couldn't stop touching him. It was as if my hand had a will of its own, exploring every inch of that mark that defined him as someone else's property. "How many survived?" I asked. "Out of the 50 who started? Maybe 10. Cole placed his hand over mine, pressing it against his chest. I could feel his heart beating fast under my palm. "Jason, I heal quickly. Look." He showed me the wound on his arm. The cut that should have taken weeks to heal was already visibly better than when he'd arrived just 2 hours ago. "That's why they want me back. I'm too valuable to let get away." The reality of his situation hit me like a cold wave, but paradoxically, it only intensified my attraction. Here was a man who had survived the unthinkable, who carried secrets that could destroy powerful people, and he had chosen to trust me. "The man with the golden tooth," I murmured. Cole nodded. "Derek. He works for them." "Derek?" My stomach dropped. "My client Derek? He's not your client by chance, Jason. They know you mean something to me." The implication of what he had just said hung between us like thick smoke. Cole had just admitted that I meant something to him, something important enough to put him in even greater danger. "Cole," I whispered, my hand still pressed against his chest. He leaned forward, eliminating the little space that remained between us. "I know this is crazy. I know we barely know each other. But when I'm with you, it's the first time in years I've felt like a real person, not just a fugitive experiment." His lips were so close I could feel every word against my skin. The scent of his perfume mixed with the disinfectant was creating a combination that was making me dizzy with desire. "Jason, kiss me," he begged, his voice broken with vulnerability. I didn't hesitate. I pressed my lips against his with a hunger that surprised me. The kiss started gentle, exploratory, but quickly intensified when Cole moaned softly against my mouth. His hands found my waist, pulling me even closer. The taste of him was better than any fantasy I could have created. Coffee and something subtly sweet that was uniquely his. When his tongue touched mine, I felt as if liquid electricity were coursing through my veins. "Bedroom," I murmured against his lips. Cole nodded, his eyes dark with desire. I held his uninjured hand and guided him out of the bathroom, across the small hallway to my room. The street light filtered through the curtains, creating an intimate, golden environment. When we got to the side of the bed, Cole hesitated. "Are you sure? After we do this, there's no going back. You'll be in real danger." In response, I pulled his head down and kissed him again, this time putting all my certainty into the kiss. Cole responded with equal fervor, his hands exploring my body over my shirt. I began unbuttoning his already half-open shirt, revealing more of the skin I had only glimpsed in the bathroom. His body was a work of art. Defined muscles without exaggeration. Smooth skin, except for the scars that told the story of his escape. Cole pulled my t-shirt over my head, his fingers tracing paths of fire across my bare skin. When his hands reached my waist, I felt my knees weaken. "You're even more beautiful than I imagined," he whispered, his mouth finding my neck. The touch of his lips against my sensitive skin made me moan out loud. Cole smiled against my neck, clearly pleased with my reaction. Our hands became more urgent, exploring, caressing, discovering every sensitive spot. When Cole lightly bit my earlobe, I gasped and gently pushed him toward the bed. He fell onto his back, pulling me with him. I stayed on top of him for a moment, just admiring the view. Dark hair spread on the pillow, lips swollen from our kisses, dark eyes watching me with a mix of desire and tenderness that made my heart leap. "You're perfect," I murmured, leaning down to kiss a trail down his neck. Cole arched his body when my mouth found the sensitive spot where his neck met his shoulder. His hands tangled in my hair, holding me against him as I continued my exploration. Every inch of his skin I kissed seemed to ignite something inside me. When I got to the tattooed code on his chest, I paused to look him in the eyes. "You are not anyone's property," I said with conviction. "You are free." Tears welled up in the corners of Cole's eyes. "With you, I feel free." I kissed every number and line of that horrible mark, transforming it from a symbol of slavery into something that connected our souls. Cole trembled beneath me, murmuring my name like a prayer. Our hands found the last barriers of fabric, removing them with reverent haste. When we were finally skin to skin, the whole world seemed to shrink to that moment, that room, that impossible connection between two men who had found something extraordinary in extraordinary circumstances. Cole flipped me over, getting on top, his eyes shining in the golden light. "I've been thinking about you since the first day," he confessed, "about what it would be like to be like this with you." "Me too," I admitted, my voice hoarse with desire. When our bodies finally came together completely, it was as if the whole universe made sense for the first time. We moved together in an ancient and perfect dance, every movement synchronized as if we had done this 1,000 times before. Cole buried his face in my neck, whispering words of pleasure and promises that made me see stars. The world shrank to sensations, warmth, pressure, pleasure building like a storm inside me. "Jason!" Cole moaned my name as we climaxed together, our bodies trembling in unison. We lay entangled afterward, breaths gradually returning to normal, hearts still beating fast. Cole was tracing lazy patterns on my back while I rested my head on his chest, listening to the comforting sound of his breathing. "This changes everything," he said eventually. "I know. I can't run away alone anymore, and I can't ask you to come with me." I lifted my head to look at him. "You're not asking. I'm offering." Cole studied me with eyes still dark with post-climax emotion. "You don't even know what you're getting into. Then tell me." He sighed, his fingers playing with my hair. "There's a clinic here in Madrid, Buch Regenera. It's a front. In the back they do illegal procedures. Organ harvesting, genetic experiments, things that would make you sick." I felt my stomach clench, but I kept my expression neutral. "Go on." "They have a central file with information on all of us, the survivors. Medical records, videos of the experiments, locations of the others who are on the run." His eyes met mine. "If we could get that information, we could expose everything." Cole nodded. "And free the others too." The magnitude of what he was proposing hit me like a wave. It wasn't just about running away anymore. It was about fighting back. "It's too dangerous," he said quickly, seeing my expression. "Forget I mentioned it. We can just run away. Go somewhere they won't find us." "No." Cole blinked in surprise. "No? We're not running away." I leaned in to kiss him softly. "We're going to end this once and for all." For the first time since I'd met him, I saw genuine hope shine in Cole's eyes. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Cole pulled me into another kiss, this one full of gratitude and love and promises of a future. I love you, Jason, he whispered against my lips. I love you too. The words came out naturally, as if my heart had known them long before my mind accepted the truth. I was in love with this extraordinary man who had appeared in my barbershop carrying secrets that could change our lives forever. And for the first time in 5 years, I was ready to fight for something that really mattered. The plan we came up with in the following hours was risky beyond anything sane. But when you're in love with someone who has spent their whole life being hunted like an animal, sanity becomes a luxury you can't afford. Cole knew the routine of the Butte Regenera Clinic like the back of his hand. 3 years ago, he had spent 2 weeks observing the place before deciding it was impossible to break in. But now, with my help, maybe it would be different. The security system is sophisticated, he explained as he drew a makeshift map on the back of a utility bill. Cameras, motion sensors, armed guards. But they have a weak point. What is it? Arrogance. They never expected anyone to be stupid enough to try and steal back. The plan was relatively simple, which paradoxically made it more dangerous. Cole would go in the front as a patient interested in cosmetic procedures, something the clinic legitimately offered as a cover. Meanwhile, I would create a diversion in the back, allowing him to access the computers in the basement where the data we needed was archived. What if something goes wrong? I asked. Then we run like hell. The next morning, I tried to maintain a normal routine at the barbershop, but every client who came in made me jump. Samantha noticed my agitation immediately. You look like you've seen a ghost, she commented while arranging products. I might have, I muttered. Roberto arrived at his usual time, grumbling about Madrid traffic. While I was cutting his white hair, he talked about his usual conspiracy theories. And for the first time, his words about secret government experiments didn't seem so crazy to me. You know, Roberto, I said as I applied aftershave. Sometimes conspiracies are real. He looked at me through the mirror with sharp eyes. Of course they are, my young friend. The trick is to figure out which ones. Derek didn't show up that day, which was both a relief and a confirmation that Cole was right about him. His absence left a strange void in the barbershop, like when you know a predator is circling, but you can't see it. At 5 in the afternoon, I closed early, making up an excuse about personal appointments for Samantha. Cole was waiting for me in the apartment, dressed in clothes I had never seen. A light blue dress shirt and dark pants that made him look completely different from the mysterious young man in the beanie I had met weeks ago. Ready? He asked. Born ready. We took a taxi to the vicinity of the clinic. During the ride, Cole held my hand tight enough to cut off circulation, but I didn't complain. I could feel the tension radiating from him in almost palpable waves. If something happens to me, he began. Nothing's going to happen. Jason, listen to me. If something goes wrong, you run. Don't look back, don't try to save me, just run. I won't leave you. He looked at me with an expression that mixed love and desperation. You don't understand. If they catch me, I'm just another experiment going home. But if they catch you... He didn't need to finish the sentence. I kissed his hand intertwined with mine. We're going to get out of this together. The Butte Regenera Clinic was in a modern building in the Salamanca neighborhood, all glass and stainless steel. It looked exactly like the kind of place where rich people went to get rid of wrinkles and add a few years to their lives. The perfect facade for unimaginable horrors. Cole got out of the taxi a block early, walking calmly toward the main entrance. I headed to the back, where a narrow alley separated the clinic from a residential building. The plan was simple. Create enough noise to attract the back guards, giving Cole free access to the basement. I waited 15 minutes, as planned, before starting my distraction. I found some trash containers and started knocking them over, making as much noise as possible. Then, I lit a lighter near some old newspapers, creating a small, controlled fire. Nothing dangerous, but enough to get attention. It worked. 2 guards came running out the back, yelling in Spanish and trying to put out the fire. I took advantage of the confusion to climb the back fence and enter the clinic courtyard. My heart was pounding in my chest as I moved through the shadows. I had never done anything remotely like this, and the adrenaline was making me dizzy. But the image of Cole being hunted like an animal gave me the strength to continue. I found the back door he had mentioned, a service entrance that was usually locked, but which Cole knew how to open. My hands were trembling as I tried to follow his instructions to force the lock. That's when I heard the screams. Cole. He was screaming. I completely forgot the plan, forgot his instructions about running if something went wrong. I ran toward the screams, following the sound through sterile corridors that smelled of disinfectant and fear. I found Cole in the basement, pinned against a wall by two men in suits. One of them was the man with the golden tooth. The other was holding a syringe that glistened under the fluorescent lights. "Welcome home, Experiment 23, the golden-toothed man said. I didn't think. I just acted. I grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and threw it at the head of the man closest to me. He fell like a sack of potatoes, the syringe flying away. The golden-toothed man turned to me with surprise and anger. "Who the hell are you?" "Your worst nightmare," I replied, hoping I sounded more confident than I felt. Cole took advantage of the distraction to break free and hit the golden-toothed man with a punch to the jaw. The sound of his fist meeting flesh echoed through the corridor. "I got what we came for," Cole shouted, holding up a flash drive. "Let's go." We ran through the corridors as alarms began to sound. More guards appeared, but Cole knew shortcuts they didn't expect. We made our way up a fire escape to the roof, then jumped to the next building. The chase that followed was like something out of a movie. We ran across the rooftops of Madrid while helicopters circled above and police sirens echoed in the streets below. Cole moved with the grace of someone who had spent years on the run, but I was clearly out of my element, stumbling and slipping on the damp tiles of the night. "This way," Cole shouted, pointing to a fire escape that went down to an alley. We descended quickly, our feet making a lot of noise on the metal. On the street, Cole stopped a taxi by practically throwing himself in front of it. "Estación de Atocha," he said to the driver. "And quick, please." During the ride to the train station, Cole held my hand as if it were a life raft. We were both sweaty, dirty, and probably in shock, but we had done it. We had the evidence. "It worked," I murmured, still not quite believing it. "It worked," he agreed, smiling for the first time in hours. At the station, we bought tickets for the first train leaving Madrid. Destination Valencia. Cole said he knew investigative journalists there, people who could use the information on the flash drive to expose the whole operation. While we waited on the platform bench, Cole finally relaxed enough to tell me what he had found in the files. "It's not just 10 survivors," he said in a low voice. "It's 23, and they know where all of them are. What does that mean? It means we can warn them. Gather everyone. End this once and for all." The magnitude of what we had done began to hit me. We hadn't just saved Cole. We had potentially saved 22 other people who were living the same life of constant terror. "And then?" I asked. Cole turned to look at me with eyes shining with hope. "Then, if you want, we'll go back to Lavapiés. I'll reopen the barbershop. We'll live like normal people for the first time in our lives." "What if I don't want to?" He hesitated, insecurity crossing his face. Then I understand. You didn't ask for any of this." I laughed softly and kissed him right there on the station platform, not caring who might be looking. "Idiot. Of course I want to." The train arrived a few minutes later, a gleaming steel leviathan that would take us away from Madrid and toward what we hoped would be a better future. We found seats in the back of the car, Cole insisting on staying where he could see anyone who came in. When the lights of Madrid began to disappear through the window, Cole finally allowed his shoulders to relax completely. He rested his head on my shoulder, and for the first time since I'd met him, he seemed at peace. "Jason," he murmured against my neck. "Yeah? Thank you. For everything." "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do." He lifted his head to look at me. "You saved my life in more ways than you know." I looked at the man who had transformed me from an ordinary barber into someone willing to break into clandestine clinics and run across the rooftops of a foreign city. 3 weeks ago, I was Jason Rivera, the American who cut hair in Lavapiés and tried to forget his past. Now I was Jason Rivera, the man in love with a survivor of genetic experiments, who carried on his flash drive information, capable of bringing down an international criminal organization. Life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. "Cole," I said, as the Spanish night landscape passed by the window. When all this is over, when the journalists publish the story and the people responsible are arrested, what do you want to do?" He thought for a moment. "I want to wake up one morning knowing I don't have to look over my shoulder. I want to have coffee with you without checking the exits of the cafe first. I want you to cut my hair because I actually need a cut, not as an excuse to see you." I smiled. "That sounds perfect. What about you? What do you want?" I looked at the man falling asleep on my shoulder, this extraordinary being who had survived the unthinkable and yet maintained enough hope to fight not only for himself, but for others he didn't even know. The answer came easily. "I want to wake up every day knowing you're safe. I want to build something real with you, something no one can take away from us. And I want to help you find the other survivors, so you never have to live in fear again." Cole smiled without opening his eyes. I think we're going to get along great, Barber. I think so too, Experiment 23. He laughed softly. Don't call me that anymore. That number doesn't define me anymore. What do you want me to call you? Just Cole. Cole Matthews. The man who fell in love with an American barber crazy enough to break into a clinic for him. And I'm Jason Rivera, the barber who found out that sometimes it's worth risking everything for someone special. The train continued its journey through the Spanish night, carrying two men who had found love in the most unlikely of circumstances toward a future that, for the first time, seemed bright with infinite possibilities. What you hear here is just the beginning. The complete stories, unfiltered and with all the details you can imagine, are available now. Check out the link in the description right now. If you've made it this far, it means you've followed this entire incredible journey of Jason and Cole. This story teaches us that true love sometimes appears when we least expect it, and that it's worth fighting for those we love, no matter how impossible the situation seems. If you want to see more stories like this, stories that touch the heart and show that love can truly conquer any obstacle, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell to not miss any of the next adventures. And tell me in the comments, do you believe Jason and Cole will be able to live happily ever after exposing the organization? Until the next story. And remember, sometimes love arrives in the most unexpected ways.